On today's program, we'll be taking a look at education. What is it? How did it come about? What are the benefits? And what are possible solutions to shortfalls? Education. Firstly, let's define what we mean when we say education. In today's modern world, education is defined as academics. Which is the study of academia or subjects geared towards finding a profession or being proficient at a particular job in society. However, education begins at birth. So we'll, in our timeline, and we look at till death. From the time a person is born, the infant has certain facets to learn. When the child begins school, there are facets to learn. As a teenager, there are things to learn. As a young adult, and as a mature adult. And then as a senior citizen till death. So education, fundamentally speaking, is a lifelong process. Academics prepares us from, let me label this a little. So infancy, child, teenager, young adult, mature adult, and senior. Now, if we were to split this into age, the first stages fall closer together than the latter stages. Meaning, if we give a timeline from young adult of being 21 to 30, we gave for teenager, we gave from 12 to 20. Child, we'll give from 5, let's say 5 till 12, 11, and infancy from 0 till 4. Academia caters mainly from 0 till, let's say, 25. Under academia, we learn skills for a job. And by skills for a job, we are speaking of human interaction, or social skills, pertaining to work. and mental capacity to perform the work or task, to perform a certain task. And this can be decided by the individual. However, besides academics, we as individuals must learn social skills to be applied outside of work. And these are social skills for personal relationships, we must learn how to manage time, manage health, manage wealth, and manage ourselves. And by self, I mean our self-image. So, simply by looking at the points, we can see where academia, although important, teaches us job skills and mental capacity to perform work, whereas other educational needs would include social skills for personal relationships, managing time, managing health, managing wealth, and managing our self-image. Where do we learn these skills? From infancy, we learn social skills through the bonds we form with parents and siblings. From interaction with siblings and play with parents, we learn how to relate on a one-on-one basis with another individual. So we may see where a child who is properly socially oriented through play with their parents can orient on a one-on-one basis with another adult or another child. Young children learn social skills by attending preschool or playing with groups of children at similar ages. So they learn peer social interaction. They learn how to play games, they learn how to lose, to win, how to accept, and how to lead, and even in some cases, how to think in terms of orienting themselves within a group. Now, I'm not saying that a child does not think before this or outside of playing, but I'm talking about learning social skills. A teenager is now beginning to learn social skills for adulthood, to prepare for adulthood. And this will be the training ground for developing skills to be used successfully as a young adult. So, infancy, a child learns through trial and error to prepare for social interaction in groups. By learning through trial and error in groups, they prepare for social interaction as teenagers. By learning through peers and trial and error in the teenage years, they prepare for social interaction as young adults. And by trial and tribulation as young adults, they prepare themselves to be mature adults. Next on our list, we'll have how to manage health. And managing health can only be done when you're healthy. You cannot manage health if you're ill. So you cannot learn to manage health at the later stages. So that's not for health. Managing health must be done at a younger stage when there is health, and learning through trial and error what is healthy in terms of healthy lifestyle. And this is the age to develop a healthy lifestyle. At this stage, in learning how to manage health, we develop healthy lifestyle habits, how to make healthy lifestyle choices when it comes to eating properly, sleeping properly, exercise, and developing a routine for maintaining health, which will benefit us in our later years. And it is far easier to develop a habit as a child or teenager, and probably as a young adult, than to develop a habit later on in life. Simply by the fact that our minds have already been conditioned by this stage, so we tend to pick up things less easily. Next on our list is managing wealth. Now, in managing wealth, we tend to ignore that aspect, mainly because the study of managing wealth is called economics, and that in itself is a study, and we tend not to think about what we have as wealth. But managing wealth is important in order to maintain a balanced lifestyle, depending on the needs you have as an individual, and later on when you have a family structure. There must be some sort of intuition with regards to managing income and assets. And this would be done from somewhere in the child stage well into the young adult stage. But by the late, let's say from 25 to 30, we should already have well-established practices in how to manage assets and income. So I would say that managing wealth and assets should be something taught or learned as a child before the age of 20. Because a child, from the time they start school, will have an allowance. So there is the opportunity to teach financial management, and a teenager will begin to understand what assets are. So there is the ability to teach wealth management fully at this stage. Next on our list, we will have time management. Now, time management develops from habit, and habits will develop into proper time management practices. So this can be done from infancy by having a regular schedule for the infant. And by having a regular schedule, the infant learns simple skills like how to manage sleep time, having a proper bedtime set, having fixed times for things like bathing, things like exercise and play, which will develop a routine in the young child. Now the young child has a already semi-established routine, can go on to refine this routine with the understanding of fixed eating time, fixed play time, fixed study time, well into the teenager years. And by this time, through trial and tribulation, there are habits that will form that will benefit a young adult. So a lot of people expect to develop proper time management skills when they enter the workforce, because then they need to manage time in order to work efficiently. However, I would say that time management should be done well before the age of 20 or well before entering the workforce, because proper time management routines will free up a lot of spare time in your day when work is introduced. What I mean is, if we have, let's say, an 8-hour workday, and we start our day at 5 a.m. hypothetically, and we start work at 8, and we work till 5. Let's say 5 is here. People with poor time management can't seem to find enough time in their spare hours or outside work hours to perform the tasks that they have. And even they might not find the time within their work hours to perform the work they have, so they may need to overstep into personal time. So proper time management skills and techniques will allow a person to manage their free time efficiently. Now, what do I mean by proper time management? Proper time management means prioritizing what benefits you so that your day will be as stress-free as possible. And that does not mean probably looking at a movie. That does not mean looking at videos on YouTube. That just means maximizing the time you have to yourself to do the things that are important to you. Next on our list is self-management. Which I believe to be the most important aspect to be managed in educating yourself, because self-management can be broken down into our ego, into desires, and into our regrets. Our ego will be broken down into self-perception, that is how we view ourselves, and self-projection, and that is the part of ourselves that we project out to society, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. The way we project ourselves to be liked, or the way we project ourselves to get a promotion, or the way we project ourselves to fit in. And self-perception is the way we see ourselves, which may be in line with our self-projection or somewhat different. And this is why self-management is important, because in terms of our ego, if the way we see ourselves is different than the persona we project, then we become disassociated in our minds with ourselves, which can lead to a series of mental issues. If our desires are not properly managed in relation to how we see ourselves and what we project. So let's say I have a desire to find a very successful person to be married to, but my self-perception is that I am not successful, but I project that I am successful. Then we try to match the projection with what we want instead of matching our perceived self with what we want, which may be two totally different things. And the same can be said with regrets. If I have certain regrets that I hold on to and they match my self-perception, then I could honestly and sincerely work on fixing whatever it is I regretted. But if my self-perception is different from my regrets, in terms of I may regret something that I don't see being of benefit to myself, but it is of a benefit to my projection, and that also leads to a disassociation within ourselves. So these are really subsets of the ego in terms of our perception of ourselves and our projected self. And that is why self-management, which is the management of desires, the management of regrets, and the management especially of our perception of ourselves and the projection and the self that we project, is important. Now these are the things that we must learn, which falls under education, what we should be thinking about as education. Where do we learn these things? Academia is an easy answer. We learn academia at school. More importantly, academia we learn at the appropriate school. And by appropriate school, I'm not talking about a physical building. We can learn academia from tutors, from tutors. We can learn academia more or less by ourselves, so self-taught. And we can learn academia from somebody who acts more as a mentor. A mentor, different than a tutor, in that a mentor may teach a group of academia to an individual. For example, a tutor might teach math, and a mentor may teach math, physics, and chemistry. As part of mentorship to become a scientist. In the earlier days, mentorship was the only way to learn art, where a young artist will ask to be mentored by a prominent or popular artist. So the appropriate school for academia is important, which will be in line with what we want to become. Now that's a distinction between who we are and what we are, which is, I can say, artist. And the question could be, well, what do you do? Well, I'm an artist. I am. Or I do art. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I am an artist, which is an important psychological distinction between the profession of being an artist and being an artist. Now, academia. The modern academic structure is based off the European academic structure. Things moving. Which is schooling through institution. Before this, before formal learning institutions, people learned directly from mentors. Now, typically speaking, the mentor was the parent. So the person took up the profession of their parent. Very famous example, Jesus Christ was a carpenter. But in modern times, we desire to be, to have a profession beside that of the parent. So we learn at institutions. However, I would argue that there is more benefit in learning from a parent, the profession of the parent, rather than learning a profession at an institution. And the reason I say this is because, let's use the example of a carpenter. A carpenter must know his trade or skill. He must know customer relation. And under customer relation, he must know conflict resolution and negotiation. He must know time management, proper time management for work and all workers. And a bit of bookkeeping. A successful carpenter, I should say. And all these skills would have been learned at in a younger age, because learning from a parent who themselves was also a carpenter, his education would have started, or their education would have started from the time they could understand their environment onwards. So if you have a person who learned a trade at the time of being born till 20, he has 20 years of education in this skill, rather than a person who at 20 does a carpentry course for 2 years at a trade school and comes out assuming that they have a professional or a master level ability at carpentry. So in this example, I will say the skills needed are better learned from a parent. Now, people will argue that, well, that only applies to trades. Well, in a previous episode, we covered the social structure. And in our social structure, we laid out the mentalities of people, the natural born affinity to understand concepts and develop them. So, we have individuals who are tradesmen, craftsmen. We have individuals who are businessmen. We have the more protective-minded people. And we have those who are interested in maintaining the order of things. Now, within each group, there are those who would have mastered their skill set and have knowledge and become masters of their particular sector, who will pass that knowledge on to further generations efficiently, rather than in an institution setting where we would have people who teaching on an academic level may not be teaching things that will be successful in the real world scenarios. I'm not saying that schools don't teach. I'm not attacking any institution or saying that schools don't teach. What I'm saying is that the apprenticeship method would seem to better benefit the transition of proper skills to future generations. On the flip side of this, we have the social skills that need to be learned in this method, where you will have, obviously at some point, when a couple gets together, that's my couple, the people would have already been educated in a number of life skills to match corresponding life skills. So let's say the carpenter's daughter and the carpenter's son would already understand relating life skills. Now I won't go too much in depth into it because this will be covered in our marriage episode. And that was today's episode, where we covered education and looked at some of the other facets of education that may tend to get overlooked or ignored or probably underdeveloped in our education system today.